Welcome back to this class. I'm introducing inheritance. Inheritance is one very important concept when it comes to object-oriented programming, and that is what we are basically going to deal with from this lesson and any other lesson that is going to follow this lesson. So inside my package, that is the lessons package, I have created a new class and I named it simple inheritance.java. So I am in my new class right now. Let me zoom so that you are able to see what is happening. Alright, we are good to go. Okay, so we have learned about classes. So we are able to actually create a class from another class. That is, a class is able to inherit from another class, and a class is able to inherit all the members that are defined by that class. So a class inheriting from another class is normally called a subclass. The class that is inheriting from another class, we call it a subclass, while a class that is being inherited is called a superclass. So a superclass is the class that is being inherited. A subclass is the class that inherits the members that are defined by a superclass. So the subclass inherits all of the members that are defined by the superclass, and then it's able to add its own unique elements into that particular subclass. So it will have all the members of the superclass plus added elements of its own. For us to be able to create a subclass, or for us to create a class that inherits from a superclass, we use the extends keyword. Now let's get right on it. For us to really grasp these concepts, we have to do this practically. So we need to actually inherit, need to use the word extends. So I'm going to put a comment here, and I will say create a superclass. In other words, what I'm doing right now is we are creating a superclass, then we will be able to create a subclass that is going to inherit the members of the superclass. So we are creating a class A. And we are going to give our class A, we are going to declare integer I and j, two integer values that are of the type int. Then we are going to have a method that is going to display I and j. So the method has no return type, so we say void, and we are going to call the method show ij, because it's gonna show us the values of I and j. So what are you going to do in this method? We are simply going to put a print statement. So we're going to say system.println system.println, and all that we system.out.println, and all that we actually need to print here is I and j. So we can say I and j, then out of these quotation marks we can put a plus, and what we want to print is I. Then we can put another plus, we put spaces, then we put another plus, and then we put j, and then we have our termination there. So we have created a method that prints I and j, and this method is inside our superclass, that is the class A. So we can close our class there. Now right below after this class, right below this class, we want to create a subclass. So let me put a comment and say create a subclass by extending, we are actually extending A, we're extending class A. So we are creating a subclass by extending class A. and for us to be able to do this, we need to say class, then B is actually the subclass that we want to create, then we say extends. B is actually extending A, so class B extends A, and our class B extends A, as I said, as I was introducing inheritance, is basically a subclass that is going to inherit all the elements of our superclass A, but it can also have its own additional members. So we're going to give it additional members. Let's give it the integer k. So we say int k. So it has an additional member that is k. So you need to also have a method for our subclass that is going to show us the components of or that is going to show us the value of k. So because this method is not returning any value, we just say void show k, and what it's going to do is we are going to print the value of k. It's going to say system dot out dot println, and what we're going to put in here in our parenthesis is actually k, then we put a full colon, we put plus, and we put k, and then we terminate our statement at the end there. Alright, so I want you to pay close attention. We have created a superclass A that has the method show ij. We have created a subclass B that is actually inheriting the members of A, and then it has its own elements, additional elements, that is the instance variable k, and it also has its own method that is show k. Okay, we want to give this class an additional method that will be able to calculate the sum of I, j, and k, because it has inherited I and j from the superclass. So we want to give it another method. So we don't have a return type, just say void sum, and void sum is not taking any variable, any parameter at that time. Then we have the print statement. We say system.out.println, and what we are going to have in these parentheses, first of all, let's show what we are doing. So it is I plus j added to k, and then let's show let's say plus, then whatever we are doing here, because we want to do an operation, let's just put it in parentheses. We say I added to j added to k, so that we are able to print the results of this summation, and then we put there semicolon. So right now we have our two methods for this particular inherited class. So let's come to our main public class simple inheritance. Let's declare our main method. So we say public static void main, and then we have parentheses. We say string args, and we give it square brackets, and then we give it curly braces out there, so that we can put our code now in the main. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to create two objects. The first object, we will create it from the class A, and the second object we'll create it from the subclass B. So let's say A, we just call it sub ob for sub object, and we say is equal to new A, because we are creating it from this A, the superclass A. Then let's create another class from the subclass B, so we can just call it sub, because it is a sub object. We call it sub ob, and we say this one is equal to new B, and then we have parentheses, and we have termination there. So we have created two objects, one from the superclass A and one from the subclass B that we have created by extending A. Now it's important to understand that regardless of us using the superclass, the class A as a superclass to create or to have objects, subclasses inheriting from it, we can use that superclass by itself. So let me just put a comment here and say the superclass let me say the superclass may be used by itself. So regardless of us using that class as a superclass, we can still use it by itself. So let's assign values to I and j that are of the object superob created from the class A. So to do that, we need to say superob dot I at this time. Let's give it the value 10. Let's give j also the value. So superob dot j, we give it the value 20. Okay, now we can actually print the contents of our superob object. So we can say system.out.println, and we say contents of superob. Let's have a full colon there. Then what we're going to do is we are going to call the method that actually prints the contents, the method that prints ij, which is show ij. So to call it to invoke that method on the superob object, we need to say superob, and then we say dot show ij. That is going to actually print the contents. Then let's print a blank line because we still want to print the contents of the subclass. So let's say system.out.println that way to print an empty line. So let's also give values or to the instance variables of the subclass B. Now to do that, we need to let me just put a comment here and say the superclass has access to all. I mean the subclass, not the superclass, sorry, the subclass, because I want to demonstrate that right now. The subclass has access to all public members of its superclass. So the subclass has access to all the public members of the superclass. Right now, the public members of our superclass A are I and J. Those are public members because they are not declared private. Okay, so let's now assign values. To do that, we can say it's now subob.I. I'm going to assign it the value 8. Okay, let me see. Oh, I use double B. I can just change this one here. Let me just remove this B. Yep, we're okay. Subob.I. So the other one will be subob.j. We can give it the value 12. But again, it's important for us to understand that subob also has an added element, that is k, so we can initialize it also. So subob.k, we give it a value of maybe 5. We give it the value 5. Alright, now we also need to print the contents of the subob. So we say let me just have space there and say system.out.println, and what I'm gonna put there is I'm gonna say contents of the subob, and then I'm going to call the method that belongs to the superclass A that shows I and J, and then I call the method that belongs to the subclass B that shows K. So to do that, to call the method that shows I and J, we need to say sub ob dot now the method, so dot show ij, that is going to show us the values of I and J. Then we call the method also sub ob dot show k, the method that shows the value of k there, so that we are able to see all that. And again, we can just print a blank line. So system dot out dot print ln, we want to print a blank line, and then after that we can just we can also show the sum, because we declared a method that calculates the sum of all these. So we can show the sum. Let's say system dot out dot print ln, and what I want to show here is sum of I comma j comma k, or we can say and k. Now we need to have these in quotation marks, so we need to have these in quotation marks, yeah, that way, so that now here we can call the method that shows the sum. So to do that, we say sub ob dot sum. Okay, sub ob dot sum, we call that method sub ob dot sum just right there, to enable us to actually print okay, let's not call this method here inside here, let's call it outside. Let's just print these words in this statement, just print those words in that statement, and then we will call the method separately out here. Let's just call the method separately out here. So we're going to say sub ob dot sum, we call it right there, so it is of essence for you to realize to note what is happening here. We are accessing the elements of A inside B. So let's run this code and see what it gives us. So when we run this code, let's see the output. Yes, it is showing the contents of the sub ob as I and J. It shows 8 and 12. Then K is 5. Then okay, let's just drag up here. Contents of the super ob I and J are 10 and 20. Then contents of the sub ob I and J are 8, 12. Then K is 5. The sum of I, J, and K, that is I plus J plus K, is actually 25. So guys, looking at this code, the subclass B here, includes all of the members of its superclass A, and this is why the sub object is able to access I and J, and even call the show ij method that is defined in the superclass A. Also inside the sum, where is sum? I just want to show you the sum. Where is it? Up here. So inside the sum method, I and J can be referred to directly. As you can see here, we can refer to I and J directly as if these instance variables are part of B. So even though we have A as a superclass for B, we need to understand that A is actually completely independent and a standalone class that can be used by itself. We have used it here. We have actually used A by itself here. I have this comment: the superclass may be used by itself. So being a superclass doesn't mean that it cannot be used by itself. Also, the subclass can be a superclass for another subclass. We're going to talk about that much later. We can have, when we're talking about class hierarchy, you will see that the subclass can be a superclass to another class. In short, your father gave birth to you and you give birth to a son. and the son give birth to a son. So what happens is, your father is a father to you, but you are a son to your father, but you are a father to your son, and your son is a father to your grandchild or your grandson. So that is what is happening. You can be a subclass can be a superclass of another class, basically. So this is how simple inheritance occurs. This is how simple inheritance occurs. Just a note, something to note down. We need to know that Java does not allow the inheritance of multiple classes into a single subclass, and also no class can be a superclass of itself. In other words, you cannot be a son of two fathers or three fathers, and that is why when you have two fathers, the other father becomes a stepfather. We call him a stepdad, because you cannot have two fathers. We cannot do a DNA test on you and we see the DNA of two men. That is impossible. Now it's the same thing with programming. We cannot have we cannot have two super classes for a subclass. And also a subclass, a class cannot be a superclass to itself. What I'm trying to say is you cannot be a father to yourself. As easy as that. Yeah, you cannot have fertilized the egg of your mother so that you become a father to yourself. So basically that's it, simple inheritance. So let me see you in the second part of inheritance.